Friday night here in Columbus, Ohio. My first time here. Our first time here. My first time here. All right, well, just happened to be in the neighborhood, sort of. 3.5-hour drive south from Detroit to Columbus area, Ohio. Hollywood Casino here in Columbus, Ohio. Like I said, my first time here. I didn't even check to see what was running. Not too picky or choosy. Just gonna hop in, whatever's running. One of my good buddies, one of my oldest buddies, one of my best friends of all time. He lives here in Columbus with his wife and son, and definitely gonna be hanging out with him later on in this trip. Probably not tonight unless we just hit and run this this joint, which I could go for. I could go for a nice hit and run job, but could go either way. Could do the hit and run job. Could end up staying late. Could be another late one. I don't even have a hotel room yet tonight. Just drove straight here, straight to the casino. Now I'm gonna go straight to the poker room. So just put myself on like every interest list there was. There's 2.5 is running, there's a 5.10 interest list, there's 2.2 PLO, there's 2.5 PLO interest only. And then there's, I think there's a 5.10 PLO running. So I'm on all of the above. Don't know what we're gonna be in. Probably 2.5 to start. And then we'll see how fast that 5.10 PLO list moves, as well as the 5.10 no limit interest list. So yeah, just kind of sort of happen to be in the neighborhood here in the Midwest, and I don't come down to Ohio too often. Eager to get back to Las Vegas, but at the same time, always eager to check out new places that I haven't been before. This is one of those places. So I've heard good things. The casino looks super nice. I know these Hollywood properties are always pretty nice, and this one seems to be no different. So just chilling, waiting to get in a game. All right, so I've been playing the 5.5 PLO game for a good couple hours now, and not going so good. Stuck somewhere around 12 or 1300, I think. A lot of second best hands I'm coming up with. There was one hand where, long story short, I flopped middle set, opponent flops top set, and we're only like 50 or 60 big blinds effective in a straddle pot. And then every other hand was not really an all-in situation, just kind of semi-obvious spots where I was beat, and I call one bet, end up folding on the turn. Not too many showdowns, some, but there was another hand where I flopped 3 pair, and I c-bet it. Unfortunately, it's a very connected board, and then my opponent pots it. I could take the high variance route, but I think we're about $1,400 effective, and it's a single raise pot pre-flop. Not sure it's best to just jam it all in there, so I took the low variance route and called on the flop. Don't improve on the turn, he pots it again, so I just give it up at that point. He definitely announces his hand when he just pots it and then pots it again, so take the low variance route, just flat on the flop, and then fold on the turn. So just that's the kind of the story so far. Running 2 pairs into higher 2 pairs. A lot of the same going on. So not the most exciting of news thus far, but just riding the waves. All that being said, the game I think is not that good. There's lots of straddling going on, but all the straddling going on is on the button rather than under the gun. Yo, shout out to Ryan. Just chatting to Ryan, vlog watcher, shirt buyer. Good meeting you, Ryan. But as I was saying, I don't think that the button straddle is good for the game. There's been some chatter about that recently, and I think I'm falling into that camp of agreeing with that sentiment. I think people kind of tighten up pre-flop when they know the button is likely to continue. They have to play out of position. There's more limping going on rather than raising. I think it tightens people's ranges up a little bit, and I think it's a bad sign when people are straddling on the button but never under the gun. So I'm actually going to jump back into some no limit action here and get some hands for the vlog. It's much easier to post no limit hands than it is PLO hands, but always good to jump back and forth for variety's sake. So that's what I'm going to do. Back into the no limit action, 2.5 no limit. I don't even know what the max buy-in is yet, so I will inform you of that shortly.
That's fine. 5. Pretty.
Go up and take a shower.
All right, trying something a little bit new here with a voiceover rather than a split screen. But in this hand, we look down at Ace Queen of Hearts from under the gun. Very powerful cards, you might say. So I go ahead and raise it up to $20. The cutoff calls, and the big blind 3-bets to 70. Ace Queen suited, I think, is definitely worth a call. Offsuit, facing a 3-bet from the big blind, who is 3-betting the under the gun raiser. I think you could maybe entertain either a 4-bet or fold. But with Ace Queen suited and the amount of playability that it has, I feel like a call is in order here. So that's what I do. I make the call and the cutoff folds. So heads up to a flop. Flop comes queen high, queen 4 deuce rainbow. My opponent checks it over to me, and there's a bit of a decision between betting and checking behind. I think it's okay to pot control here. I feel like with my hand, it's unlikely that I'm going to get 3 streets of value versus any sort of hand. Tough to get 3 streets from a smaller pair than queens. If I am ahead, I don't think there's too many bad cards that can come off. And if I am behind, it's going to be tough for me to improve in this situation. So I think a check behind for pot control feels like it makes the most sense. So that's what I do. I check back. Turn is an offsuit 5, and this time my opponent bets $100. Pretty straightforward decision here. We pick up a draw to the wheel, top pair, top kicker. I don't think there's any point in raising, so that leaves one option, and I go ahead and call. River's an offsuit 8. This time my opponent bets $250. This time it's a little bit closer. I don't expect my opponent to be betting a worse pair twice, and probably not for this size. Again, that is just speculation on my part because I have no idea who this player is and have never played in this venue before. So with my exact hand, it's somewhat middle of the road. I can have sets here. Not going to have too many 2 pairs here. I could potentially have a straight with 6-7 suited. So Ace Queen, obviously the best top pair hand that I could have. Probably going to be the best 1 pair hand that I can have. So that leaves it somewhere in the middle of the road. I could certainly entertain a fold, but as per usual, I go my usual route. Like to see showdowns, like to call rivers. So that's what I do. I toss in the call. And unfortunately, my opponent rolls over pocket aces. It's one of the hands that we block, so it feels like it's a little bit rare for him to have that hand. It feels like pocket kings is the hand that I'm most afraid of. And I feel like ace king has to make up some portion of his range here. Once again, we block that hand as well. So it's a little bit of a tough spot. I feel like my call is okay, not that great. I feel like in a very straightforward 2-5 game, you could definitely make a case for folding, but I don't think it's the worst call that I've ever made.
She's the big blind. We had a $10 blind straddle.
Oh, you did. That was totally.
So in this hand, the $10 straddle is on. There's 1 limp, and I look down at Ace Queen offsuit. Rather powerful cards, you might say. I go ahead and make it $40, and the limper calls. So heads up to a flop. This time the flop comes king 9-6 with 2 hearts. He checks it over to me. Not a flop that I'm looking to see bet, so I just go ahead and check it back. The turn is an offsuit jack. He checks it over to me again, and normally with my good ace high holdings, I'm looking to check it down and looking to get to showdown. I feel like good ace high holdings have a reasonable amount of showdown value to them. So in a lot of situations, I would be checking back here again. But in this exact situation, with a flush draw on board and a very wet type of board,
I think the best.
I feel like my opponent would never be checking a hand here twice that is of any decent strength. So I guess it's a little bit of an exploitive type bet, perhaps.
Probably play
I also
like
can
one
rep
card. That's usually
pocket
how
queens
they do
here, holding one of the queens. I just decide to put out a bet and see what happens this time. I bet $65. My opponent makes the call, so we're off to a river card.
Heads
River
up.
comes an offsuit ace and he checks it over to me again. Now I feel pretty confident that I have the best hand here. We've made top pair best kicker, but it's just a question of whether we can get value from any hands. It's going to be tough to get value from any king or jack type holding. There is one type of holding that I feel like we can get value from, and that's the ace high flush draw. So I just decided to target that exact hand and go for value versus that one hand. I think it's fairly rare that I'll be able to get value from any other pairs, but I just decided to target that one holding, and I bet $185.
180.
My opponent thinks for maybe 10 seconds and then lets it go. Perhaps you could make a case for betting very small to try and get value from a jack, a queen jack type holding, a jack 10 type holding, some sort of a jack plus straight draw type holding. I think that's reasonable, but I also think it's pretty unlikely that I'm going to get
That is
value
it for
from
me,
even those
everyone.
hands, even with a very small bet
You are a
size.
wonderful night.
In this hand, I look down at ace queen of hearts. Pretty powerful cards, you might say. So I go ahead and make it $20 to go. We get one caller, and we're off to a flop heads up. Flop comes jack 9-3. I check it to my opponent, and my opponent checks back in position. Turn is the 8 of diamonds, bringing a backdoor flush draw on board. I check it over to him again, and this time he bets $35. I think you could make a case for calling here. We have a gut shot to the queen high straight. We also have ace high, which will be good some amount of the time. However, my opponent's sizing of nearly the size of the pot, $35 into about $40, kind of discourages me from making the call and not really knowing whether an ace or a queen will be good on the river, especially if it's a diamond, as well as the 10 of diamonds potentially being dirty for us as well. So mainly due to the size of his bet, I just decided to let it go. Third time with ace queen is not the charm. In this hand, we look down at pocket aces. I go ahead and make it $20 to go, standard opening size. We get 3 callers. 4 ways to a flop of 9-3 deuce with 2 clubs. The small blind leads out on this flop and he bets $55. The big blind calls, and it's on us to act. The small blind only has maybe about $300 behind in his stack at this point. The big blind has a decent sized stack. He's got about $1,000, and we have somewhere near that amount as well. Maybe even a little bit more, maybe $1,100 or $1,200. Without having a flush draw on board, perhaps I might think that a flat call might be in order. But with having a flush draw on board and having the big blind come along, call the lead out from the small blind, makes it a little bit more enticing to put in a raise here. I'm also very happy to get it in against the small blind, who he took his time before calling pre-flop. Looks like he might have been considering a 3-bet pre-flop. Makes me think that he is pretty pocket pair heavy here. Happy to get it in versus him before any sort of cards come to scare him off. Pocket aces, I can perhaps balance it with some flush draws and straight draws here, but not really that important, I don't think, at this stake to stay super balanced. Obviously some things to consider going forward, as always, but just trying to really get it in here with the small blind and also charge the big blind for any potential draws that he might have as well. The player behind me folds, and it's on the small blind, who goes well into the tank, thinking it over for quite some time. He lets it go. Eventually he makes the fold. It's on to the big blind now, somewhat hoping that the big blind does not put in a 3-bet here on the flop, because we're deep enough where it would be rather worrisome to have to get it in with one pair for over 200 big blinds effective. But the good news is that he just decides to let it go after some thought. So we take this one down. The pocket aces hold up here on the flop. Not a massive pot, but happy to take down a pot nonetheless.
Be accurate. Let's wrap it up the session. Not much love today. I don't know if it's expected when you have like a pretty sweet uptick, nice little upswing. I don't know if it's expected to have a small downswing fairly shortly after that. But anyway, pretty small downtick compared to the past couple sessions. Book a loss of about $1,060 tonight. Could have ran better, but definitely could have played better. Definitely didn't play my best. Hit and run, right? Just another hit and run. I don't know why I even mentioned these things, that it's gonna be a short session, that I'm gonna just hit and run. And you know what the worst part is? How are we supposed to fly the drone in this? How are we supposed to get some aerial shots of the Hollywood Casino Columbus? It's not gonna happen. A day of run bad, I guess. Good news is I booked a hotel room, so I do have a place to stay tonight, or this morning, and for the next night, so time to go crash. I guess a day of chill tomorrow, just take the day off, recuperate, and then come back strong on Sunday. That's the plan. Like I said, really nice property here though. Poker room is really nice, a lot of games. There's a big tournament series going on here, so that's pretty cool too. Nice people. Kyle, Matt, Spencer, Steve, all vlog watchers. Cheers guys, good meeting all of you. All right, I'm gonna go try and not get electrocuted. Wish me luck.